the amendments, and the amendments were open until 25th, I think, 24th? Yeah, until 25th of October. So now it has been concluded, and all the submitted amendments are published. In these terms, what ESU do when the draft report is on, ESU sees what is in there, and then we see what we like, what we don't like, and what we would like to have in there. Then we go on and contact the MEPs that we have contact with, and the key here actually is the assistants, because MEPs themselves, they have so many things to do, and assistants are the main ones that are drafting the amendments and that are helping them. So we go on and actually work with the assistants rather than MEPs itself. In this case, also I think it's kind of important tip that if you want to more involve in this process and also help out ESU, it's important to establish a good relationship with the assistants. Also, of course, MEPs, but assistants mainly, because they're going to be the key persons that will help you, will do things together with you, and so on. So we submitted our amendments to a couple of the MEPs, actually more, and all the political groups, and then we're working with the specific assistants to MEPs that we work with. And at the moment we have actually, I think almost all of our amendments submitted, and they are submitted by the MEPs in the common amendment table. What happens then? Before the plenary, of course, you need to have support for your amendments as wide as possible. So when they're submitted and when they are public, you take the amendments that you want to support and you go again to the MEPs and talk with them, talk with the assistants, and trying to get their support for your amendments. And then, of course, they vote at the committee, and then if those amendments are supported, then they are in the new document, and then you are pretty sure that they're going to end up also in the final version, because in the plenary tabling amendments, it's less likely that something will disappear or come up there. So the end result is going to be in December, and it is European Parliament resolution on Erasmus Plus implementation. As I said, it's give a guidance to the European Commission. However, it doesn't have any direct political influence or impact. That means that it's not only important to work with the Parliament, but there are other actors that will have more influence on the end result than the Parliament itself. When we look at the big things and what you can do and how to influence the midterm review, the answer is rather simple. So I guess everybody has some kind of problems within the Erasmus, or you know what are the major problems in your countries. Either it's financial necessity to add up more grants for students, or it's not accessible project funding because of the terms of it. So there's going to be a public consultation in March 12, 2017 that you will be able to contribute, and also ESU will give some guidance in this kind of thing. And also there's selected consultation that is in December, and this is run by this company that I mentioned before, and they have a list of stakeholders they're going to interview and they're going to have input from. On this list, we're actually trying to get currently on this list. However, on this list, there are 2 organizations that we are members from. So actually, we are able to submit our opinion and our views in general, no matter if we are on that list or not. And then what is also very important is reports from the national agencies, because in every country there are national agencies of Erasmus+, and all the agencies will submit their reports to the European Commission. Basically also implementation reports saying what is working, what is not working, and those reports will have a lot of weight in terms of what's going to happen with the midterm review and evaluation. So what you can do, we would encourage you also to contact your national agencies and talk through what is working, what is not working, because they're mainly very keen on having students as a main stakeholders, because there's actually a separate action, one big action dedicated to the student mobility, and also not only student mobility but also teaching staff mobility. So shall we move to current updates? Yeah, do you have any questions so far? Yeah, I know that it's very hard to do a static presentation of 9, so I'm sorry for maybe being a bit boring, but if you have any questions, please go on and ask. So we're gonna move to the current update. I'm gonna give you a brief overview, and then I hope that we can chat a bit more about them in terms of what you want to do, what you want us to do, and how to approach it. So what's up? We have several things that's gonna happen in or are happening at the moment, and there's skills agenda that it was touched upon yesterday, but I actually will give a couple of things regarding this that I think that student unions should be aware of, and that ESU will also more concentrate on. And one of those things is the student and graduate tracking mechanisms that currently the European Commission is developing, and they want to implement the graduate tracking in every country. So currently they will run a feasibility of this, but in the long term, the aim is to have those mechanisms in each of the countries. The second thing is that they want to establish the skills, how it was called? The skills guarantee? No, not guarantee. How was it called? The skills national skills strategies. Yes, that was the thing I was looking for. The national skills strategies. So and they call also upon all of the stakeholders to be involved in the development and the national skills strategies. So in this case, also it would be important for the unions to contact their ministries and see how to get on the board, because this is going to be very crucial when talking about the employment versus employability. So not having specific skills for specific jobs, but rather focusing on employability in the long term, what skills you need to be employable, and how to transit between and within the labor market. The second thing is Erasmus Plus review that I already touched upon. I'm not going to go in detail now, but if you have any questions, just please free to drop it now or later. The third very big thing actually is the social rights pillar. So basically, it is a response on what is happening currently with not only the hate speech, but with a critical situation regarding the social rights at different member states. So they want to have a social rights pillar that would give a political guidance and more pressure on the countries to have sustainable social systems and social protection that are going to have access to the labor market and ease access to the labor market, but also would have a strong labor conditions and employment conditions, and that would give an overall framework. When we talk about the social rights aspect from the pillar, it's important to see that lifelong learning at the moment is not very much included. So currently we are aiming to get education more in there present. Then there is a revision of the EQF. Does you want to talk more about that?
Yeah, briefly. The European qualification frameworks, we already had part of the discussion and presentation in Bratislava. Basically, now it's under the DG Employment that is dealing with the revision of the European qualification frameworks. ESU is part of the advisory group of the revision. However, at this moment, what you can help out, I mean, at this moment is still the revision happening, but I mean, it's still the consultation and presentation from the country sides regarding their qualification frameworks. However, some of the things that the Commission wants to push for, DG Employment wants to push for, are there is a big resistance from the side of the member states, especially because they want to focus or the how was it called the levels? No, like no.
ECTS?
Yeah,
Credits?
Yeah, the credits.
Yeah.
Oh yes. They basically what they want to do partly it's also to equal the to the recognition of the credits.
Yeah.
The recognition of the credits from, for example, VET and higher education to be balanced and to have the eight levels. Yeah, to have the 8 levels balanced in a way that the countries are not really okay with. I can explain you in more in details later on, especially because the thing is that what they want to do at the moment and what the member countries, it's a bit, they're on a different side. And the question is whether it will pass in the long term. Mainly it's a commission trying to push something both through EU, but also but not discussing it, for example, through the Bologna process, since that's the other part that is interesting, because in the Bologna process it is DG Education and Culture, and since 2 years ago the EQF goes through DG Employment, because before that the unit that was dealing with EQF was part of DG Education and Culture. However, after the shifts, they moved it to skills moved to employment, so EQF are under DG Employment, Bologna process under DG Education and Culture. So basically the fight, not communication within the DGs, it's quite significant and their distance, so they cannot really agree. However, they also want to have this body of, this is the idea, but I don't know whether we don't know whether it will happen. Something similar as the European Quality Assurance Register, that is in European higher education area. They want to have this kind of registered for recognition of qualifications on European level. However, this is something that some of the countries do not really appreciate it, how it should be pushed. But the revision was supposed to be the first public, it was supposed to happen in mid-November, to be the first draft of the review of the EQF. However, this has been postponed due to usual bureaucracy and not preparing it on time, so it will be moved forward towards January or February, the first draft. So, at the moment, there is not really a draft as itself. So everything has been postponed, even the voting and the discussion and submitting the revision of the EQF of the European qualification frameworks to the Parliament and to the Council. It has been postponed in general. Basically, all the process. It goes a bit slower. Wanna go together? You know more since you've been on the meeting with the Europeans. Yes, another thing that the Commission wants to do or push, and this is kind of something new that appeared, and Liva will explain you more in details. It's the European student card that suddenly appeared. There was ideas around floating in EU for, especially from the Commission side in the past year or so. However, now it appeared back on the table. But Liva can explain you since she was on the meeting.
Yeah, so basically, student card is something that every student has, and we know that there are some unions that have ownership of the cards, either in the cooperation with the ISEC or themselves have developed ones, or their local unions that are distributing them. And here, a couple of days ago, actually, it came on our attention and very important issue that there is a project that the European Commission is running together with other countries and stakeholders, and they're trying to develop the European Student Card. That would be in every country of the Bologna process, and they would have the same functions, and they would be linked with all of the usual utilities that students use, and that they would be also included in the database of your exams. So when you do a mobility, then the other institution can access your exams, exam results, or automatically transfer your credits and do the recognition. However, there are very many threats within this. First of all, considering that the unions are doing the cards and that this is a significant income source for the unions, that would actually danger income regarding this. Another thing is that we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the data protection, because it would be a lot of data available in such a system. So the student privacy and student data would be a huge issue. But here also we need to see what they aim to do with it. So what are the main intentions? And currently it's actually pretty serious, because if previously it was just a project that would see how to eliminate papers in the mobility, then the recent concept notes show that this is actually launching in a couple of countries very soon, and that this is something that we need to react quite immediately. And a couple of days ago, it went to the COREPER, to the Permanent Representation Council. So they are starting to prepare a document for the Council of the EU. And that means that this is now on the table and that we will need to deal with it quite soon. We are currently drafting email to the member unions with a concept note, and giving you a bit more information on this, but also asking for you to evaluate what kind of impact it would have on you, on your national on your local unions, and then see how to deal with it further on. Also, another thing that we could do is not one thing that we can do is block this, or students can do is block this, and this is quite easy through the national representations. But another thing is that we can also say that nothing about students without students. So if you do this, then this would be completely run by student organizations, and then give ownership to students. So we kind of need to see in which direction we want to go, but of course we kind of decided without the member unions.
The recognition of credit. Some countries are still struggling with that. Yeah, I mean, the other fear is that we all know that in European higher education area, the discussion about, one of the advisory groups that we have, the non-implementation one, basically one of the things that it's tackled is the recognition. Is one of the key commitments that is recognized from the BFUG. However, we know that still not all the countries have proper implementation of the recognition, both of prior learning, but also recognition of credits for mobility. And students are struggling with that. And if we have suddenly this kind of European student card that basically goes with the recognition of credits, but then the recognition of credits even within Bologna, it's not really a done deal yet. We are aiming and we are struggling to get to full recognition, but this is also something that is pushed a bit too fast and too quickly and forward by the Commission. And whether it will have a clear impact or benefit, or it will be just something that will appear and disappear in few years, which basically will show that it can be a failure and a waste of resources that could have been allocated on a different things in higher education.
Yeah, that's true. Then what's so we're we're going to send you a presentation on more detail about this, but it's also publicly available now on the AHEA website, ahea.info. But it's quite hard to find it, so I'm just going to drop the link in a NOM or somewhere else later on. Monica has a question.
So you're not completely sure which group it is successful.
Actually, the thing is that they are on the consortium, how they're developing it. They have both stakeholders, they have countries like the governments, they have higher education institutions. And in the concept note, they say also that they want this to be purely administrated by the higher education institutions, so to have it on a very grassroots level. So this would, whether it would be sustainable or not, in this kind of way, appearing, disappearing, it would also depend on how many institutions want to do this and what kind of resistance there would be. Because I know that France is very on board currently on this, and they even had the statement from the president on this. So their institutions would be very encouraged to take this on. However, it depends also how it would go with the other countries. It's quite hard to say currently, because in the pilot project there are 4 countries involved, but how it will go further on, it seems that they want to push it. If they put it to the Perm Rep Council at the moment, so they want to have outreach. They also have gone to the Bologna process, saying that they want to have the outreach to Bologna process. So it's definitely something they're currently pushing, but how sustainable it will be, it's very hard to tell at this stage.
And the other thing is that, as we already talked, Bologna process is voluntary process where you cannot really influence fully the country whether they should implement it or not.
Yeah.
Somewhere or another financially entitled also with the current product, especially in their country. So however much benefits there might be on having something common on the European level, then when it comes and goes again, then there goes whatever the union was entitled to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily close to this system that's
Yeah. So this is why we're gonna now be reaching out to the unions and asking you to evaluate what kind of impact it would have, because it would be a lot of local unions that gonna suffer quite substantially, and also a lot of national unions that gonna suffer very much. So this would be the question, because of course we would not support this if the student unions and income of the student unions would suffer. No. Now there is a multi-annual financial framework that also is very now going to be discussed very soon, and the first discussions have started. In this way, it's going to be very important to secure the funding for Erasmus, because a couple of days ago, actually, no, yesterday, I was in a meeting of the Working Group 3 of the Bologna process, and also it's a major concern of the Commission itself how to secure existing funding for Erasmus in the upcoming term. So this is going to be something that ESTU is going to deeply engage with, and one of the outcomes and conclusions will be driven from the midterm review. And the last one that I see Rob is very nodding and aware of is a Brexit deal. And we'll see what's going to happen, because a couple of days ago you saw that the court ruled that they cannot trigger Article 50 without a vote in the Parliament, in the UK Parliament. So we'll see how it goes from there. However, the Brexit deal is a real thing. It's under negotiations, and for us it's going to be very important, and also for NUS UK, how the students will stand in the deal. What will be the conditions for EU students, for international students, and also not only higher education, but all of the social rights actually are on the stake. So we have started actually to talk with the MIC also on how ESU will engage in this process, but we're going to follow up on this later. This is also something that we will be deeply engaged with in terms of access to higher education and student mobility. I think we're out of time.
Yep.
And it's exactly 10. And my next slide is a bit I will give a couple of words about what to remember when you talk with your MEPs and when you talk with your perm reps. And what to do is, first of all, discourse analysis, be aware of every word, what is written in the documents, because there are different codes for different things. For example, when we look at the ET 2020, there's this brilliant, very widely used word as cost sharing. That implies, for example, tuition fees. Well, when you analyze the Bologna documents, then you see that you need to see the terminology and put it in a broader context. Because, for example, in 2012 communique, there are a lot of discussions about funding, and it is post-crisis and austerity measures. So you always need to put in a context. Second, national states will have the final word in terms of education always, so keep it close. And there are different platforms that are interacting with each other. EU and the Bologna process is one of the very visible examples of the non-traditional intergovernmental process. So I think we're gonna close with this. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to take some now, or me and Blaže, we're gonna be around for today and tomorrow. So just approach us if you have something. And yeah, thank you.
After 1 hour, we started at 9:05.
Yeah.
We have time for maybe for a few questions.
Oh yeah.
It varies.
Yeah.
Maybe we should take a few questions. Let's take the first 2 questions and then you can answer those 2. So please raise your hand up. So maybe one from there and then for you. So you can start, Denmark.
Could you send us first of all your slides? Because sharing how you work facility with those who want to use a lot better than just giving them advice. And also these amendments that we have to share those and
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, we're actually.
I think it's really
Okay, great. We're actually planning to share the amendments that we submitted and MEPs submitted on our behalf. So then you can also contact your networks and spread around and get more support for them.
Alvin?
Yes, thank you so much for a really great overview. And I'm happy to hear as well that we have actually focused on the right points in our advocacy as well when we went to Brussels last time. So it's very much the same things. But the European student card was a big surprise for me. So, and apparently for
For us as well.
So I'm just unclear because in Finland with our unions, it's a very core thing that we have our own company, which actually was present yesterday in the speech, and that's also a future way for us to get funding and things like this. So I was wondering, did I understand correctly that the European student card would be competing with these kind of systems? And yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So in the analysis and the concept note, they have compared different cards and outreach. So for example, if they compare that ISIC has coverage of 4 to 6 million, then they aim to have at least 10 million coverage here. So it's kind of put in a context to compete with it, and that would be kind of mandated, like that every student would need to have it. This is what they aim for. And yeah, this is also why we consider it a threat for many local and the national unions.
And yeah, I'm not going to comment, but my heart just stopped beating for a second there.
You went out when you were presented.
No,
before, yeah.
Yeah. Paula.
Thanks for the presentation. I was just kind of wondering, we've been working in SAMOK Council on the European Social Rights Pillar. And we're kind of wondering, will there be any feedback from ESO to help us answer the consultation, which is coming up at the end of the year?
Yeah, there will be. We are currently discussing with a couple of assistants also how to approach it. We haven't decided or discussed internally, but there has been a proposal from one of the assistants to also organize a common event at the Parliament regarding this and how to get education more visible there and how to approach it. But we're currently doing a concept note for the unions, and because the consultation soon going to come to an end, and we want also you to contribute.
Yeah. Just maybe I can just give a really quick comment. I was just going through the amendments. We met with a few MEPs in Brussels, and we talked with Hannu Takula, which is the Finnish shadow reporter for CULT. And I was really happy to see that I think we got 4 amendments that we prepared into the amendments that he put in. So just as an example of how much influence you can actually have when you are in contact with your MEPs and supporting or putting in your amendments. We did that before we got the stuff from ESU, but we were happy to find out that we were more or less on the same lines on many issues. So.
Yeah. That's great. Any other questions?
Okay, well then I guess it's time for a huge round of applause. And then it's time to take Anna to the stage. So the woman who made me to be who I am, I would say, I think we can say that. Well, but you are my political mother, I would say. Me and Anna, we go way back. We used to work together in the Finnish National Youth Council, where she trained me to understand everything about European politics. And then then later on, she went to European Youth Forum as a policy officer.
No, policy and advocacy coordinator.
Yes, madam. And after this, now she's working as a hardcore lobbyist. But that's not that passing.
Ei voi onko kellään tikkuu?
Onko kellään muistitikkua?
Anyone has USB stick to borrow?
Aivan. You can take a toilet break now if you want, or get some water, because I guess people are just a little bit dehydrated after all the sauna yesterday. Veikkauksen arausapusaunoihin merikottiin. Jalkareisin Hanne.
Maari on jokin sanokin.
Jonnekin.
Amaton.
Tai tämmöisiä. Tykkäät sä?
Se aukeaa niin kaukana.
Gramos, can you come and help us?
I don't know where to go because
And I'm allergic to computers.
I will try my best.
well, speak it in, but
We went to the hole and then we're like, but that's it.
Is it finished? No, yes.
how do you do it?
Is it the
F? No.
or the level?
Oh, no, it was that. It was that.
This one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Now try to push forward.
smailaa se more?
It could be if you, I mean, it should not feel that way, but if you did, if your laptop has an outdated version of PowerPoint,
Maybe yeah, because this might be old.
so if,
Yeah, we can put it to my Gmail.
yeah, I think,
Open my Gmail. Sorry.
yeah.
No ei se haittaa. Ei haittaa ollenkaan. Se vähän nyt rapulee sinne, saa vähän vettä tätä. Otetaan se Pauliina Maija auki. Minä pois. Se on ihan se on niinku tavallaan langaton. Langaton, niin siinä on mitään saa sen avilletissa. Joo. Eikö se on sen guest. Hotellijohtajalla. Siinä ei mitään saunaa. Jens. Se on jopa. Hotellijohtajalla. Joo. Vatin.vieraat.syl.fi. Mikä tää? Niin. Sitten tuon manna mun lakailuun. Mun on netin iPhone Vatin. Ellei se mene nettipatki, niin heitä mun nettiin. Tiedätkö mitä? Nyt sitten kun tulee siis Jenkkien presidentti.
I think you can plug the screen here.
No, No varmaan tästäkin painaa.
On.
Ei.
Ei tämä ole ripulikoinen. So, are we ready? Let's get started then. Everyone? Now we can finally start after some technical difficulties.
Normally.
So, Anna Ranki, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good morning everyone. As Fatu introduced me, my name is Anna Ranki. Now I work as a bad public affairs consultant at one of the biggest consultancy firms on communications in the world, in Bersa Marstella Helsinki office. But before that, I lived in Brussels for 3 years and worked for the European Youth Forum, and my main task was to ensure the funding for youth and student programs on the MFF 2014-2020. And the program, obviously, you know it, it's Erasmus+. And what Fatu asked me to do today was to kind of give a short historical review what we did at the European Youth Forum and with the member organizations on this advocacy process. And hopefully this will give you some kind of a food for thought and ideas how you can try to make this happen again in the next cycle and make the Erasmus Plus get more money and so on. But first I will, like this, just remind you a few basic things about advocacy and lobbying, what you should all keep in mind. I heard that MEP Sirpa Pietikäinen gave you some insights as well, but maybe I can give you some other kind of a view on this. And then I'll give you 12 tips on effective lobbying. And on the side of that, I will tell you about the Erasmus Plus advocacy process and the MFF process. And feel free to ask questions, comments all the time. I will try to answer. So we start. First, I will give you some insights about a study that Bersa Marstella does every 4 years. The latest is from 2013. We asked from the European policymakers that what do they think about lobbying and what are the pros and cons of lobbying. And from here you can learn what the policymakers in Europe actually expect from you in a lobbying process and use these tips when you develop your advocacy plans. In this study we have interviewed almost 600 representatives from all over Europe. We have 19 countries and then Brussels as an EU entity separately. But this is just the background so that you know where the data comes from. First of all, it's important to understand who these policymakers see as a lobbyists and who do they face and in their work. And most of them says that, well, here you can see the variety of different kind of organizations that do lobbying in Europe. NGOs, where you fall in, are on the 4th place. So people see NGOs as a lobbyists. And of course, trade associations and other professional organizations on the top, and then public affairs agencies such as Bersa Marstella on the 2nd. But these kind of people operate on the same field as you do when you do advocacy work in Europe. And this is important for you to remember because policymakers are busy. There are lots of good things that they need to take into account. Lots of lobbyists that they meet, that you understand that there are different kind of players on the field that you compete with in one sense. But this is actually much more important than the last slide, because what do policymakers think that is important or positive in lobbying? And they say that, of course, the most important thing is that it ensures the participation of social and economic actors and citizens in the political process. And secondly, providing useful and timely information for the policymakers. And this is, of course, what you try to do. You try to give useful and timely provided information for them so that they can make decisions. On the EU level, it's important also that lobbyists bring the local or national issues to the discussion. And that's, of course, your role as well when you come from different European member states and from different realities that the students face in these countries, that you bring this information to the European level policymakers. And last but not least, translating technical or scientific information to understandable language or into relevant information. This is maybe more linked to academic world or engineering or something like this, where the language is rather far from the political language that these policymakers use, but they see that also important. That's the role of the lobbyists to do, that they speak the language that the policymakers speak. Oh, sorry. Tää vaan hyppii tää. Then, of course, we asked also that what are the negative aspects, that what you should, as a lobbyist and advocacy people, to avoid. First of all, that you don't outline the interests that you represent clearly, or that you don't actually properly tell that who you represent. And this is called, obviously, the transparency of lobbying. I have another slide later coming on that why this is so important. Some think that the negative aspect is that it will give undue weight in the process to elites and wealthy. Obviously, NGOs represent citizens or different kind of geographical groups. And I always say that now when I'm on the corporate side, the good thing that the NGOs have on their favor is that everybody loves NGOs. MEPs, policymakers love them, they want to meet them. So it's not about money and being rich in the lobbying, it's actually important that who you represent and how people see you. So that's one asset that NGOs have, that they have very good access normally to policymakers, that because they want to meet you. And third negative aspect is that they are not providing neutral information for the policymakers. This is also something to keep in mind, that the information should be based on facts and studies and not something that you just came up from the top of your mind. Mun pitää painaa tosta. Yeah. Now when we look at NGOs and corporate sector, and we ask from the policymakers that how would they rate these two groups on the effectiveness on lobbying and then in different fields of policies, you can see that, okay, there are certain fields that the corporate sector is very strong, but then, for example, where I think that you operate is here, human rights and social affairs. There isn't even corporate sector lobbying, actually. Do we have education separately? No. So you're kind of there with other NGOs competing and lobbying on those things that the industry does not. And you're rather good on that. Also in the environment, you can see that there is really not an industry side at all. So it's on the shoulders of the NGOs to do that. And they do it rather well. So NGOs are seen very effective lobbyists group. And then when we look at the poor practice in lobbying, the policy makers say that mainly it's the fault of the interstitial side that they don't clearly outline that who they represent, and the transparency issue is mainly their problem, not your problem. But your problem as an NGO normally is that you base your positions on emotions rather than facts. And that's something to keep in mind, that you, of course, you can use emotions in your lobbying process, and when you speak publicly, that's a very big thing. But all the arguments should be based on facts. So this is also something to keep in mind. Other negative aspects that, well, poor practice actually, is that you don't understand the process, the political process and procedure. You're too aggressive, meaning that you kind of spam the policymakers or speak in public that they are crap or something like this. Then, of course, the timing is important, that you are on time, not too early and not too late, involved in the process. Extremely important that you have proper briefing materials. Well, I don't think NGOs does do this, but offering unethical inducements, well, that's only 7% for the NGOs, so that's not really an issue for you. And then, unfortunately, some organizations still think that when they send out press release or resolution and they send it to the MEPs, for example, then their lobbying is done. Well, obviously not. So we will go through these later. That what kind of, I have some examples that on these things. Well, you cannot properly see this slide, but shortly, we also asked that what kind of an information or kind of meetings or lobbying tools make you to do make the policymakers to do informed decisions and help them in their work. And they say that helpful things are internal meetings, national authority documents. So here we come again to the EU level lobbying, where it's extremely important that you lobby also in the member states. Meetings with the industry, written briefing material, this is obvious. Site visits means that if you visit some sort of an industry site, but you could translate it also that you invite policymakers to your events and actually meet the students, explain to them what they do. Meetings with NGOs, information from the EU institutions and so on. Very basic stuff, but always good to remind on that. Now, we come to the 12 tips for effective lobbying in Europe. And I will go through these individually and then give some examples from the European Youth Forum lobbying, well, advocacy process on the MFF and Erasmus+. So what we can learn from that process, good and bad things. Well, I think mainly we did only good things, but, but let's go through these. We start, well, this will not go in this order, but we come back to this slide later. So what we tried to do from 2000, I started in the forum 2011 and I left in the end of 2013. And what we tried to do was to convince the European institutions that investing in youth should be a priority in the next cycle of multi-annual financial framework. This was the top aim and goal in all our work. And when you start doing advocacy, of course, first you need to set your aims and objectives. You need to prepare your strategy on the lobbying process and identify your ultimate audience. And on the process, you of course need to adapt your strategy when some changes come. But okay, first you set your goals, your aims and objectives, and you make a plan how to achieve it. Our goal was written in the European Youth Forum work plan in this kind of format, that we wanted to have more recognition and more and better targeted administrative funding for youth organizations throughout the development of new and current European Union and Council of Europe financial programs and other instruments. Well, I will focus, of course, now to the EU programs, but this was the ultimate goal that, well, not ultimate goal, but basically the most important thing that we needed to achieve in funding. Secondly, you need to understand the legislative process. You remember that I showed a slide that this is one of the poor practices that lobbyists have, that they don't actually understand how the EU works and when you should lobby different kind of institutions. So, important to know what decision maker is able to do, when, and according what kind of a procedure. And on the MFF and in the Erasmus Plus and all the European programs, we use the ordinary legislative procedure where we have different kind of actors. This is probably very familiar for you, that you identify who are the people in the European Commission who draft the document, who give the proposal, who are the people in the European Parliament that do the report, who are the people in which kind of working group or composition it is in the Council of Ministers that work on this. Then we move forward to the trilogy negotiations and finally to the adoption. And okay. And what we did in the forum, during 2012, we started, well, we had already worked a lot with the Commission on the draft of the Erasmus Plus. Well, it was then called Erasmus for All, actually, the program in the beginning. We had worked with the Commission, and same time we had lobbied on the MFF so that the actual program would have enough funding. And then when the draft about the program came out, we started working on the content of the program. So there are two processes going on at the same time. You have to ensure in the MFF that the youth-related and student-related program will have enough money. And then same time you have to ensure that the actual program and the content of the program is something that serves the needs of student organizations or youth organizations and so on. So extremely important to do these two things kind of at the same time, because if in the MFF they define that the program will not have enough resources, then obviously it's too late when they start drafting the actual program to start talking about the budget, because the budget is defined in the MFF and the program will then focus on the content. And then, of course, the division for different kind of actions inside, but the overall budget for this 7-year cycle is defined in the MFF. And of course, in the forum regarding the MFF, it was not only the Erasmus Plus program that we advocated for. We advocated that in the MFF in general, they should invest more money for young people, whether it's European Social Fund or external action services or whatever, that youth as one group should be a priority, and there should be money for youth organizations in different kind of actions that the European Union does. So we had kind of wider goal in the MFF than in the European Erasmus Plus program. But okay, so there are three important institutions: European Commission, who drafts all the documents, so you need to work with them already in the drafting phase. Then secondly, the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers. So you need to understand who are you talking to, and who are you talking to on the right moment. And of course you need to identify the actual people who decide on this matter that is important to you, because if you want to go talk with a policymaker that doesn't follow this topic, it's a waste of time, really. So you need to identify the actual people that decide on the issue. Okay, I went through this already, but from the Commission you need to, of course, identify who is the Commissioner and his cabinet, what DG is responsible, and what unit is responsible about drafting the document. From the European Parliament, you need to identify which committee. Normally in Youth and Education Affairs, it's the CULT committee. And who is the rapporteur, and who are the shadow rapporteurs on this specific topic that you're lobbying. And from the Council of Ministers, obviously the ministers from each member state, which ministry and which minister is responsible about that topic. And here it's extremely important that every member organization in different countries is involved in this, because otherwise it doesn't happen, because Council is always deciding together with the European Parliament on issues that are important to you. So here we need the member organizations that actually are based in the member states. And also from the Council, normally it's not only the minister and his advisors, but actually the civil servants that sit in the working parties, committees that actually do the legislative work. The ministers only then decide. And in Brussels, you need to work with the permanent representations. And not only in Brussels, but the member organizations in different member states. If they come to Brussels, they should always go to meet their perm rep and discuss about current issues. And here, if you talk about Erasmus Plus, then talk about Erasmus Plus. But you have to understand that these two work together. Perm reps don't have the right to do anything without the advice from capital, meaning from the ministry. So they represent the ministry here, well, in Brussels, and they get the advice and the policy lines from the member states. So it's important to keep in good contact on the national level and then in Brussels with the perm reps. Okay, these are the decision makers, but you cannot forget key opinion leaders. And these can be, in your case, for example, your alumni network. Probably your alumni are in extremely important political positions in the member states or even in the EU. So use them, use academic people to support your course. Obviously, they will support education and students. Use think tanks, other kind of opinion leaders that can help you to advocate towards these actual institutions that do the decisions. Okay, but here 3 institutions and then opinion leaders, extremely important. Now, what happened to us in the Erasmus Plus advocacy process was that actually the proposal from the Commission was really bad. We were not happy with it. So European Youth Forum didn't success to convince the Commission that how they should draft this document, this proposal. So it was totally not in line with the aims and objectives of the forum and student organizations and etc. But that's only a draft, and And we were lucky because we were able to change the actual outcome, the final document that came out after the trilogy negotiations. But if you would be